while I was in the Wyoming room, I was kind of poking around, and they have just, on the top shelves, they have these oral histories. They're on cassette tape. They were done in the early, mid-'80s. And one of the interviews I found was somebody who was interviewing her mother, and her mother, Muriel Rogers, went to school here as an elementary school student in 1917, so exactly 100 years ago.
My name is Ivy Pierce, and I have the privilege today of interviewing my own mother, Merle Rogers, who was of pioneer stock who came here very early.
It was the daughter who did this interview. I looked her up. She's 89 years old, and I visited her. So I went to, she's in a retirement home at the street, and we had a lovely afternoon where she just told me everything about her mother. She's really into genealogy. She knows everything about her family. She's the 8th generation. Pleasure to be talking to Ivy Pierce here in Springwind in her apartment. And here we are. We have a photograph. Can you describe who's in this photograph for us?
You want me to describe the whole thing?
Yeah, go ahead, sure.
Well, this is her mother.
Where is your mother in this photograph?
She's here.
How old would your mother have been in this photograph?
Probably about 12 or 13, maybe. Or maybe even a little younger.
Okay.
But she would have gone to that
East Side School. Yeah.
So she would have been the one that went there for a short while. And this is her brother Eddie over here. And this is her sister here. And this is Anna, her sister. And this is her brother Hiram that lived with the grandmother, Sarah Elizabeth Yawkey Foster.
So we moved into the town because us kids all had to go to school, and we lived up close to the park. I don't really remember if the park was there or not, but I went to the first grade in the old East Side School. East Side School now sits in the center of what is that? Used to be the junior high school and things, and it was just a square building sitting right in the middle of the block, the lot.
Civic
block.
Center.
It's the Civic Center at the present time, but it is the center of the, set in the center. And they went through most of my grades of school there. I went through up through the 5th grade in the East Side School. After we moved out to the Smith place there, I went to school from there, and when we first moved to the Smith place, well, I went to school, there's 3 of us went to school together, my sister and my brother Ed and my sister Hazel. And my brother Ed, we rode to school in the buggy and stabled our horse there in the Winslow barn. And then the next year, they put on a school bus. That was the first time they ever had a school bus to run out there, out south of town here. I don't know that, I guess they had school buses in the other areas, but this was the first school bus that was out there, and it was an old touring car. And we was the first ones on and the last ones off every night.
But then they found one of those old vehicles that was kind of a bus-like, and a few children from that area south of town would be able to get onto that and come into town and go to the East Side School. And one time when the bus did not come home, then grandfather was there to go and see what happened to the kids not getting home from school. And they found that it got bogged down and wouldn't work. And so he took the children they took the children in from that area back to their home.
It really wasn't the best accommodations in the world because we was packed in there like sardines time we got to school and things. When we loaded up to come home at night, well, that's what happened. Oh, another thing that I can remember, yes, while he's living over there, they was airplanes. First airplane that I ever seen in my life came down, and it landed just about where the state highway department is over here now. And we came across over. My dad brought us across to the tie plant over there to see that airplane, and it was quite a novelty. And boy, that was the first thing we all saw. We used to go to the windows. We'd hear one of those airplanes coming, and the teacher wouldn't say a word. All the kids would flock to the window to see that airplane go over.
The planes would be flying over. It was a time that there were planes that were trying to fly across country, and they were different size and different. They were smaller ones, of course, and nothing big in those. And so they would see the bus, and that there was a little field out there toward Fort Sanders is now. And it's on this side of the road, maybe a little more over from where the fairgrounds is now. They landed there to refuel or something. And then after they were refueled, then they would take off from there. But my grandfather, Harry Frank Foster, would take the children over so they could be near and watch those planes land and take off.
I went to the 6th grade in what is now the Stanton School, which was the North Side School at that time. And they had an overflow. They couldn't handle all the kids. They had the 7th and 8th grade was junior high at that time, and it occupied the full top floor of the East Side School. Now, some of them say that the high school was the old North Side School, but I remember the high school as being right where was Washington School and things. I remember the first lunchroom on the East Side, too. The cooking girls used to do the cooking, and we would get soup and sandwiches. All the kids that had to ride the bus, or country kids that came in, rode the bus, and they'd go down and have hot chocolate and sandwiches at noon, which made it rather a nice thing, because that was the first lunchroom that there was in Laramie. And the cooking class was on one side of the basement in the East Side School. Manual training and that was on the other side. And the girls had their sewing in that room there, and the kitchen where they cooked the meals. And right down the center of the hall, they set the tables up for all of us country kids that came in to school. Town kids wasn't allowed to eat there at that time unless they brought their sack lunches, and they ate sack lunches. But they did cook for us country kids, because this was the first lunchroom that we had in Laramie.